On a beautiful summer's day in 1983, on a mountain hike with my linguistic professor in Washington State, he told me why he became a missionary linguist. It wasn't because he wanted to reach the people with the gospel and give them God's word. It was because he was a linguist who liked to work with language. And Bible translation was one career where he could go somewhere neat and do linguistics. In other words, it's not a calling, it's a job. Where else are you going to go to get people to pay you to do linguistics research on little-known people groups in exotic locations all over the world? There are only so many university positions for linguists. What if you want to explore and do new language studies, write groundbreaking papers, have them written up in journals, and get a reputation? Or what if you just don't like the humdrum of 9-to-5 life? Then Bible translation may be right for you. All you have to do is sign the statements of faith of various churches and organizations, repeat the right words, raise the money, and poof, you're off. Then, when you get to the field, you can do linguistics to your heart's content. And you never have to actually evangelize anyone with the gospel. You just have to do your job. So, what if they found out they were translating the wrong Bible? If they have no qualms about the other lies, this one won't bother them either. How could anyone expect a guy who doesn't believe the scriptures to give up his or her job in defense of the truth? So I have nothing much I can say to those people except you need to get saved. Now, what about the sincere Christians? What about the people who live by a moral code and try to have some integrity in their life? There are plenty of them in the midst of all this Bible translation work as well. Have you ever thought about how much people would have to give up if they were to admit the truth about Sinaiticus being fake and the Bibles made from it being perverted? What if they were to admit that God kept his promise to preserve his words through history? Let me give you a glimpse of how big this really is. Hi, I'm David Daniels from Chick Publications. Just a few years ago, I learned about the missionary linguist Carl Graebe. He trusted the people at Wycliffe SIL, Summer Institute of Linguistics, to tell him what Greek New Testament he was permitted to use. You see, he was translating the Bible for a group in Cameroon, and they said he must use the United Bible Society's Greek text to translate the New Testament. You see, Bible translators don't just translate from English. They also get some basic Greek training so they can use a Greek text and linguistic manuals provided by the agency to help them make new Bible translations. You may not know this, but since 1966, translators have not been allowed to use the King James or the Greek received text, which was a foundation for the King James. They have to use the UBS text because the Protestants, Baptists, and Roman Catholics agreed to use just one Greek text for the sake of unity. Graebe never planned to work with Roman Catholics, but it didn't matter what he thought. Because of that 1966 agreement, eventually he had to work alongside Roman Catholic priests to edit apocryphal books that are nothing more than folk tales that he didn't believe in, to be part of their Roman Catholic Bible. He had to do it. It was part of his job. But what if he said no? Then he'd be out of a job. All those decades of work in Cameroon for what? But realize this, that UBS text that he was forced to use was a joint text made with Roman Catholics, and it had changes from the preserved Bible because of that fake Sinaiticus. So it was a double whammy. So this issue of Which Greek text to use clearly affects the Bible translators on the mission field. But notice, it also affects the modern textual scholar. Remember, it was the textual scholars who told him which text to use. What if they figured out that they were basing their work on a fake Greek text? So now we have to think of the larger picture to understand the situation where we find a modern textual scholar. He or she, like thousands of other scholars, may have spent years poring over the intricacies of textual corruption and correction, carefully analyzing the quality of the ancient papyrus and vellum, figuring out in what order scribes erased and corrected the text, creating theories about what was behind the many changes, and on and on. These people have a lot of interesting investigative work to do when they work with the corrupted Alexandrian type texts. But if they were to acknowledge the preserved Bibles as God's words, they would be admitting the best text is one that is static. It doesn't change. It's what God said in a particular language, nothing added, nothing taken away. They could study textual preservation, but they'd have no reason to study perversion or alteration of the text. There are almost no differences of any merit in the received text manuscripts, so there'd be only so many people who could or would be able to get a job investigating it. The majority of highly trained text scholars would be out of a job. And who would hire them to look at some tiny differences when we already know what words God wanted written? It's like a forensics team analyzing a room where no crime has been committed. What good will that do? Who will pay them? What's the use? So, knowing that, think of this. Who would hire them if they were to openly admit they believe that God preserved his words, or that the texts in front of them are counterfeits and unworthy of their time and effort, much less their faith? Remember who gave them their jobs. Bible translation agencies have been bound by agreements with the Roman Catholic religion since 1966. But this is what struck me just yesterday. It is much, much larger than missionary Bible translators. How many people are there wrapped up with this corrupt Greek text? How many careers are we talking about? They're not just linguists out in the Bible translation field, they're also linguists at home who train those linguists to go out into the field. And there are the support teams, the editors, and the publishers of those corrupt texts. And then it gets larger. There are universities and colleges who employ linguistic professors, philologists who studied ancient languages and writings, and other text experts. There are Bible societies who license all the translations to the publishers. Almost all of them have agreements with Rome. There are publishing companies who sell all the Bibles based on the counterfeit texts and keep selling one new version after another, or at least a few per year in multiple languages. Then there are the stores that sell all those Bibles, the marketers who make the advertising for each new Bible as it comes down the pike. That's more merchandise for everyone, from Amazon to Walmart. That's a lot of money and a lot of jobs, but it doesn't stop there. What about the pastors? For many, their denominations or fellowships have stated what Bibles they can or cannot use. Think of what would happen if the pastor suddenly held up one single Bible and said, "These are the words of God. This is the one Bible we all have to obey. No other Bible will be allowed in this congregation. They're all based on a counterfeit text." Even with the right Bible, there could be a cost. Some people could leave, the denomination or board could fire them. What about the youth ministers who seem to spend a lot of time telling young people that King James is too hard and offering up every new fad Bible to excite the youth. Same for them. Again, we're talking a lot of jobs all over the earth. This bait and switch plot began 150 years ago to give a corrupted Bible, largely based on the missing and changed words of the Sinaiticus. And it has grown into a huge worldwide deception involving thousands, even millions of people. But in all sincerity, I would say to all these people, what's more important? You're standing in your job, or you're standing in front of Jesus at the judgment? I know that some of them, maybe many of the people I've listed, don't even believe in a judgment day. That really does not matter. God is not subject to our belief in him. And the judgment day will still come, whether we want it to or not. It may be a big coincidence, but the end-time Babylon is something that is so big that lots of people, including believers, will be in it. But the Lord calls them out in Revelation 18:4. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues." It may be another coincidence, but Revelation 18 then goes to list all sorts of jobs and all the business that would be lost when Babylon falls. And yet, in Revelation 18:13, one that was mentioned was the souls of men. Your soul is very important. Don't treat this Sinaiticus issue lightly. If you check for yourself and find that even a few of the facts that I presented are correct, that means the entire Bible translating, producing, teaching, preaching, believing multitudes are believing lies that were placed there by someone. Both the Bible and the Bible translation agencies are very specific about who that someone is that agreed upon those lies and placed that lying text in people's hands. The Roman Catholic system. It's not just a job. There are the souls of men on the line. Count the cost carefully. God bless you and have a wonderful day.